Hello, today is Thursday, October 23rd, 2025. I'm Tony Mangino from TC2, and this is Staying Connected. As you may have heard, on Monday, a major AWS outage disrupted everything from work apps to home devices. Newsflash updates popped up so frequently, even I lost track of them. Things are calmer now, but the impact and the lessons are not going away. Joining me today is Deb Boehling, a senior partner at LB3. We'll walk through what happened, how enterprise customers were affected, and perhaps most importantly, what steps you should be taking now because, yes, it'll happen again. Deb?
Hi, Tony. Thanks for having me. Let me start with some background on AWS's latest outage. In the early hours of Monday, October 20th, around 3:11 a.m. Eastern, AWS's U.S. East 1 region, Northern Virginia, experienced a DNS domain name system resolution failure tied to the DynamoDB API endpoint. Put simply for everyone, DNS is like the Internet's address book, translating human-friendly names into IP addresses machines use. When it failed here, applications and services couldn't find their database endpoints. The mistake cascaded. The failure in one core service triggered trouble across all other dependent services. AWS itself says the issue impacted services reliant on that region's endpoints. While AWS reports full service restoration by approximately 6:01 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday, the knock-on effects lasted much longer for many systems.
That is brutal. The operational and reputational impacts to businesses, especially those on the East Coast, must have been extensive.
Absolutely. I live in Northern Virginia and I was in the zone. Yet personally, my impact was minor, just some slower systems, but many others were hit far harder. We saw a broad spectrum of disruptions, business applications like Salesforce, Slack, and Heroku, financial apps like Venmo and Coinbase, gaming platforms like Roblox and Fortnite, smart home devices like Ring, airline apps for carriers like Delta and United, even systems for education and small business. The truth is, we depend on a handful of cloud providers to host massive parts of our digital economy. When one of the major hubs stumbles, the ripple is huge. Experts estimate lost productivity and service interruptions could reach into the hundreds of billions of dollars.
Deb, it reminds me of prior incidents like the SolarWinds hack or disruptions at Snowflake. Considering that, I would have thought businesses would have stronger backup plans to avoid this scenario. So, what should large enterprise customers be doing now?
Well, first, many businesses have worked on their mitigation measures, so we need to give them some credit, but they have to work on what they work on and how it is critical. For example, AWS holds about 30% of the global cloud infrastructure market. Many enterprises assume spreading workloads across multiple availability zones with one provider equals resilience. But in this case, even zone diversification within AWS wasn't enough because the root failure was at the foundation layer, DNS plus DynamoDB in US East 1, which crossed all the zones. One clear takeaway, true provider diversification, using more than one provider matters. We heard from companies that fared better because they use multiple clouds and/or their own data centers, for example. A firm noted in the Wall Street Journal that it didn't go down because of its multi-cloud strategy, though I should note that specific firm was paraphrased for our discussion. Some additional strategies might include spread workarounds across different cloud providers, such as AWS, Azure, and the Google Cloud Platform, rather than just multiple zones in one provider. Consider maintaining critical apps data in on-prem or co-location infrastructure that you control, or employ hybrid models. Ensure your architecture doesn't rely on a single region or a single provider for routing or DNS resolution. Conduct regular failure mode and recovery exercises that simulate cloud provider failure, not just your app component failure. Review dependencies of your dependencies. For example, if AWS US East sneezes, will you catch a cold? Will it spread like COVID? Even systems hosted on other clouds, like Office 365, might rely indirectly on AWS infrastructure due to intercloud dependencies. In fact, that's where my slowness came from on Monday.
Deb, what you're saying is don't just trust that because you're in AWS multiple zones, you're safe. You need to actively assume part of your provider could go offline and plan for that.
Exactly. In fact, the October 20th AWS outage exposed how fragile centralized cloud reliance still is, even for the big players. As one expert put it, when the system couldn't resolve which server to connect to, cascading failures took down services across the internet. It's a reminder that risk is real, even if you have good cloud hygiene. Your architecture must assume failure, not just of your app, but of the underpinning provider services. So, yes, we're not talking about utopia, but about minimizing business and reputational risk. It's all about preparedness.
Deb, any final words for our listeners?
The October 20th AWS outage should serve as a wake up call. Even the biggest cloud provider falters. For businesses, developers, and IT leaders, this is an invitation to evaluate your cloud risk, diversify your cloud supply chain, invest in resilient architectures, and test for real world failure scenarios. Because this type of large scale disruption will happen again. Don't wait for the next outage to find out if you're vulnerable.
Thanks very much for your time today, Deb. And if you would like to learn more about cloud diversification strategies, or if you'd like to discuss other ICT needs with Deb or me or any of our LB3 and TC2 colleagues, please give us a call or shoot us an email. You can also stay current by subscribing to Staying Connected, by checking out our websites, and by following us on LinkedIn.